Here are the best Cypher setups on Split. So Split is a really good map for Cypher, and he's both viable on the A site as well as the B site. So let's start with the first Cypher setup. This is probably going to be your default setup. So first what you want to do is you want to line the bottom edge of this wall with your bottom of the left HUD line. Okay, and then line up this edge of the wall, the shadowy part. Place that right next to the squiggly portion of your HUD line, and then just simply toss, and you get a one-way for A main. Do a default tripwire for A main, and a default tripwire for heaven, and pair that with a smoke at the entrance. So the barrier is right here. So right after the barrier goes down, walk forward a little bit and place your camera right onto this wall. You can then move backwards and play from the heaven position. Stay on your camera, and this camera allows you to see the entrance from A main as well as the entrance onto heaven. So once you start to see movement and once you start to see people funnel in the A main entrance, hop off of your camera,
Cage triggered.
activate this cage, and this allows you to give you a one-way to kill whoever tries to enter A main. If you do see movement up ramps, what you can do then
Cage
is
triggered.
activate this cage and spam and kill whoever hits your tripwire. What you can then do is fall from the heaven position and hold a more passive angle and play for retake with the rest of your team. If you happen to realize that the enemy team likes to rush, you can do a similar setup to our first one, with an exception of the camera position. So again, it's the same smoke right here. So toss that smoke right there. Put a heaven tripwire right here. Pair that with a smoke. And put a default tripwire in A main. For your camera, you want to look at the sign, jump, and place your camera as soon as the barrier goes down. If you see movement here, then you know that they're rushing, right? Because of knowledge you gained from previous rounds. Hop off of your camera and again play from this heaven position. And same thing,
Cage triggered.
activate this cage when they try to rush in on A main,
Cage
and
triggered.
activate this cage when they try to rush heaven. Fall back and play retake with the rest of your team. For a more ratty setup with Cypher, come up to heaven, stand on the edge of this ledge, look into CT, jump, and place this camera right here. This allows you to get very early information into A main as well as the entrance of the site. And it also allows you to see if the attackers has pushed through heaven and has now pushed into your spawn. Hop off, place a tripwire on the edge of this flower pot, and place a secondary tripwire right here. Place a cage right here, and place a secondary cage right here. Sit behind the flower pot, activate your camera, and look to see if there's any movement A main. If you do see movement, hop off of your camera, wait for the attackers to trigger your tripwire, at which point you're going to activate your cage, swing out, and kill whoever has pushed through A main. Then
Cage triggered.
activate your second cage and kill the attacker who has triggered this tripwire, or use the cage to move into CT, or use the cage to move into elbow if you want to hold down the site. So with this setup, what would normally happen is the attackers will try to push through A main, trigger this tripwire,
Cage triggered.
you're going to activate this cage and kill whoever has pushed through A main. Then his friend might then try to trade him by swinging
Cage
around your initial smoke and trying to cut off your escape. At which
Cage
point you
triggered.
activate your second cage, and you can see how it's very easy for the attackers to get caught up on this tripwire. At which point they're going to get spammed and they're going to get killed, and you're going to get away for free. One thing to note about this setup as well is that Raze is a very common agent on this map. So if there is a Raze on the enemy team, this tripwire usually gets hit by the boombot. So what you can do is you can put a standard tripwire just in A main and you play just the same. Or you can do a very high tripwire off of the edge of this flower pot like this, and then the raised boom bot won't be able to destroy it.
Here.
For a more passive setup on site, come here, place a camera on the side of this wall, place your tripwire right here, and a secondary tripwire right here. Place a smoke in the elbow position, and play from elbow. Activate your camera, and when you start to see people funnel into A main and pass your camera, hop off of your camera, and wait. When you're waiting, hold the right side of elbow, okay? Because if there's a raise or if there's a jet, some of them like to just push directly into CT, and they might catch you off guard if you're holding the left side. So once your tripwire goes off on site, activate your cage, swing out, and kill whoever has pushed onto site. Then what you can do is you can stay in the elbow position and push through your own smoke and kill the planner, or take the other aim duels. Or if there's a lot of people on site, you can simply throw your smoke right here, activate it, and move back into CT and play retake with the rest of your team with a very powerful retake camera. Some other really great camera spots for Cypher include this one right here. So again, come onto heaven, aim at the edge here, jump, and place your camera. This is a very high up camera. It gives you very early information into A main. You can also see if anybody has crossed into heaven, and it sees the lane, which people can use to get into your spawn. The camera, you can place a camera right up here. So just walk probably to this line here, jump up, and aim at this edge here. You can place your camera, and at the very right edge of your camera, if you actually turn it all the way towards the right, you can see if people have actually pushed into A main, and it also gives you a really good view of sight. If you get this camera a little bit higher, like that, you can actually see more of A main. It just depends on what you want. This camera can get shot out early as well if people are expecting this camera to be placed. Another camera that's pretty decent, and that gives you basically an entire viewpoint of sight, is right here. Again, come onto the edge here, and you can place your camera up here. It just gives you a very good view of sight, and most people don't shoot this out because when they're pushing up sight like this, your camera is right above them, and nobody's going to check this angle right here. The final camera that is really, really good as well is just the camera on this back wall. So jump up and place your camera right here. This is really good because when people actually push in here onto ramps here, especially if they're here, you can actually see their feet, even here, right? You can see their feet and they basically can't see your camera. If you want it to be a little bit more concealed, you can put it a little higher on the wall, like this. And they have to basically walk all the way in here until they can see your camera. So what you can usually do is if you see the feet of people here and you know that they're coming in, they're kind of running forwards, then hop off of your camera so that when they are in heaven, they won't be able to see your camera, right? So they don't know that you know that they're in heaven, and you can swing and catch people off guard based off of that information.
Here.
For tripwires, there are also a couple of other very crafty tripwire locations. So if you know that there is a jet who likes to, or they're very aggressive and they like to just sprint down into CT, these tripwires can catch them off guard very often. So you can actually just look at the plant spot here, the flower pot, and put a wire like that, or you can put a wire like this. So either of those tripwires are very good, especially if you're playing the elbow position. You can just, again, put a smoke right here, and you know, you can even pair that with potentially just a wire like this and a cage like that, and you can put your camera on the side of the building like this. So again, right, if you see people that are pushing like this, once they hit your tripwire, you can activate your cage, swing out, and kill whoever trips your tripwire. Some other really good tripwires include this one. So this tripwire is more for heaven. Just come right out to heaven and put a very low tripwire on the ground like this. This tripwire is actually very difficult to actually shoot out, is because if people are pushing into heaven, again, nobody's jumping into heaven, so they're most likely going to get hit by this. And once they get hit by this, because they're already past this choke point, they can't see the tripwire anymore. And so once they get past it, they're looking left, they're looking right, they won't be able to shoot it out. So they might get very flustered. And again, right, so once they get tripped by the tripwire, if you have like a smoke here, you can peek out, and it's just a free kill for you. Normally Cypher isn't played in events, but there are a couple of interesting Cypher setups for mid that can maybe catch your opponent off guard for a round or two. So for the camera spot, come up into vents and look at this faint gray line in vents. Find this dot and just place it to the right hand side of this dot. So anywhere close is fine. This camera can spot the feet of enemies before they can even see your camera. So from the enemy's perspective, it looks like this. So once they're here, you can see their feet. And once they're walking up, again, you can clearly see their silhouette. And until they walked all the way into vents, there's no way for them to see this camera. So it gives you very early info, and your camera probably won't be shot out. Pair that with a tripwire like this, and a smoke before the round starts. Okay. Once the barrier drops, you want to put a tripwire as close to the edge of this wall as possible. Okay, and you want it to be as close to the edge because you want as much time as possible to shoot them. And there's no way for the enemy to see that you have placed this tripwire. Then simply play back into vents, hop on your camera, and wait for the enemies to push up into mid. And once you see feet kind of coming, walking up, and basically they're around this location, so meaning they have walked up the stairs, hop off of your camera and just simply hold this angle. Right. When they hit your tripwire, you can kill them. And when they hit this tripwire, you can activate your cage and spam through. Okay. This tripwire also helps because if you do end up activating your cage and you try to spam the people who are walking up to heaven, and somebody tries to push you, then they'll be caught in this tripwire and they will be caught in this cage, right? So meaning if they walk into the tripwire, they're basically suiciding you. You can get another free kill like this. So with this setup, you can actually hold down mid quite well, and you can cover the entrance of the B heaven and the entrance into vents. If you want to hold mid more aggressively as a Cypher from the B heaven side, come up to B heaven, place a tripwire right here, and place a smoke right here before the round starts. Now the barrier is right here, so once the barrier drops, come up here, aim at the edge of this crate, jump, and place a camera right there. This camera gives you a lot of information mid, because it not only sees into mail, but it also spots people who are pushing up on the left side of this wall. You can even spot people who are pushing up in the middle of the stairs as well. After you place that camera, quickly place a tripwire right here, and back off and play from this angle. Look into your camera, and once you start to see movement and sound mid, you can then hop off of your camera, hold your tripwire, and once the tripwire is activated,
cage triggered.
Activate the cage, swing out, and get the free kill here. Then you can run back from heaven while throwing a smoke like this. Hold for the tripwire. Once the tripwire is activated, activate the cage, come out, and get a free kill. This basically ensures that you get either one or two free picks from the mid push by the attackers. Cypher is arguably stronger when played on the B side on split. For our first setup on Cypher, come through heaven, come to the edge of this box, look right here, jump, and place the camera on the edge of this building. This camera allows you to see into B main, and it allows you to see the entrance into heaven. Again, this camera is very powerful, because when people are actually peeking B main, you can see their feet, but they can't see your camera until they've walked all the way out into the B main location, at which point they'll be able to spot your camera. Pair this camera with a one-way smoke. To get this one-way smoke, just stand somewhere along the edge of this box, look up until you can see this wooden part, aim at the middle, and throw the smoke right here. For the tripwires, put a tripwire right here, like that, and put your second tripwire along like that, and play from the default position. Hop onto your camera. When you start to see movement in B main, when you start to spot people's feet, what you can do is you can hop off your camera, activate this one-way cage, and you can actually spot the people's feet in B main when they're not able to see you. Okay. Then simply back up and wait for them to trigger your tripwire. They trigger your tripwire, you can again swing out and get the free kill, and then you can simply back up and play from CT.
Here.
When the planter tries to go up for a plant and triggers a tripwire, you can swing out and get a pick there as well. For a more passive Cypher setup, make your way onto rafters, walk to the edge, look at the edge of this building, and put your camera down. This camera can see into B main, can see into the right side of pillar, and it can see into heaven as well. Then make your way down and place this tripwire right here. So look at the middle between these two lines on the floor, and a little bit right to the middle of this line, and place a tripwire right here, and it connects to the edge of the soda can. For your smoke, got it in the middle right here. And for your second tripwire, there are a couple of options you can do, depending on the team comp of the enemy team. So if there's a Sage on an enemy team, and you notice that they're walling the right side of pillar constantly, then you can simply come here and put a tripwire to enforce your setup like this. This tripwire prevents people from swinging CT like that. If there isn't a Sage on the enemy team that is walling the right side here, you can put a tripwire like this, and this prevents people from swinging CT, and it also prevents people from flanking you on the right side. Alternatively, if you notice that there's a lot of pressure in heaven, you can drop this tripwire to help out the person playing heaven and holding for you. Then simply play backside right here. Activate your camera as soon as the round starts, and listen for noise in B main. When you see that they're about to execute, maybe indicated by the Sage wall or by jet dashing in, hop off your camera,
Cage triggered.
activate this cage here, and spam through, either through these wooden boxes or through your cage right here. And while your cage lasts, you can then move yourself into CT and play retake with the rest of your team. Alternatively, if you want to stay on site with this cage, you can again just hold backside like this and not give up control, or you can reposition yourself to the left side of pillar and try to hold site from there. One thing to note about this setup is that if there's a raise on an enemy team, oftentimes you'll need a person to break the boombot for you on the right hand side. Again, the raise boombot, it will just break this tripwire very easily. There is a replacement you can do for that tripwire, although it is not as good. So you can find this piece of bamboo on the outside of the map. Hold out your tripwire, aim at this piece of bamboo, and throw a tripwire like this. So this tripwire, again, it's not a perfect replacement, but if the boombot is going like this, then at least they won't be able to spot this tripwire. And again, you can place your second tripwire a little bit more upper, so again the razor boombot won't hit it. And when they're coming on the site, you can activate this smoke here, spam through for whoever pushes onto the left-hand side. And you can then reposition and play either pillar or play CT and retake with your team.
Here.
If you realize that the team is pushing B Heaven quite constantly, you can use the setup to counter their push. Come up to B Heaven, place your first tripwire right here, and place a smoke right in the middle of this doorway. Then hop on to these cardboard boxes and place the default camera for B main. Come here, place a tripwire outside B main, and place a smoke in B main as well. Hop back onto these wires and play the off angle on the edge of these vents. Activate your camera, and with this camera you can see the push up B Heaven and you can see the push into B main. Now, if they're heavily pushing into B Heaven and you notice nobody is actually in B main, then you can simply just hop off this camera and hold this off angle. Normally, they will just simply trigger this tripwire and you can get the kill without activating your smoke. And your smoke is actually designed to prevent you from getting traded. So it looks something like this. Somebody will hit your tripwire, you get a kill from this off angle, then you can activate your smoke and move back into rafters here and hold this rafter push out. Or you can drop down to hell and hold the angle like this. If you notice that there is pressure B main and you actually do see people pushing from B main, what you can then do is you can activate this smoke, which can actually buy you a few seconds of time for you to be able to focus on this off angle. If nobody triggers your tripwire, where nobody pushes up in that time, then you can activate the smoke, move back onto rafters, and hold this angle here. Once your tripwire goes off, you can swing and kill the person pushing from B main. Okay, and then the tripwire in Heaven will give you information if they're scaling up, at which point you can hold from here, or you can drop down and play back from CT if there's a lot of pressure coming your way. Here are some other very powerful cameras for B site. For the first camera, come to the edge of rafters, look at this panel, jump, and place your camera at the apex of your jump. This can see into B main as well as into Heaven. The only problem with this camera is that it doesn't really get deep vision into B main and it cannot see the entrance into Heaven. So if your camera on default is not getting shot out, you should continue to place that camera, but this makes for a good alternative. For another camera, and a great camera for retake, make your way onto the right side of rafters. Look at the edge of this pillar, jump, and place your camera. This camera can see a bit into B main, and it's really good for seeing the post plant positions. You can see into backside, you can see close left, rafters, default, right pillar, basically all the common positions that an attacker might play. And for the last camera, come here, place this camera at the apex of your jump, and again, you can kind of see into B Heaven and some of the default positions that the attackers might play post plant. All three of those cameras are very good replacement for the default camera, and really you choose either one of those cameras depending on your needs. And for the final camera, so this is a bit of a bug camera, come onto the edge of rafters here again, aim at where this piece of wood and this horizontal piece of wood kind of intersects. So the bottom right corner, right there, bottom left corner. Hold out your camera, jump, and place this camera at the apex of your jump. This camera can see the entrance into Heaven, it can see the jump out in Hell, and it can see the left side of Pillar. And this camera is completely invisible to the attackers and thus can never be shot out. Again, this is a bit of a bug camera, so use at your own discretion. Here are some very powerful tripwires on the B site. The first one's right here, connects to the middle of this box, paired with a smoke right here. When the people are pushing onto B heaven, when they trigger your tripwire,
Cage triggered.
activate the smoke, spam through, and kill whoever is pushed up. Another very powerful tripwire is right here. This tripwire not only gives you information on if they push rafters, but when they actually push and jump down into hell, this tripwire would actually dangle them in midair until either somebody breaks the tripwire for them, or they just simply take damage, or they die. There are two very powerful tripwires on site as well. So if you notice that they're pushing the right side of pillar a lot and they're kind of pushing like this and swinging like that, this tripwire is a decent tripwire to be able to stop them from doing this. It's put at a very weird angle, and it also trips people who might be pushing from heaven and has decided to push through like this, or sometimes like this. And if you're playing from CT, and usually CT smoked, you can get a free kill like that. Another very powerful tripwire for B main is right here. Again, a raised moonbot will break this, but it's an alternative to the tripwire on this trash can. And it's very long, and it generally blocks the entire front entrance into site.
Here.
So that concludes all of the defensive Cypher setups on Split. I will now be showing you some attacking cameras and attacking cages. So let's begin on the A side. Make your way onto these flower pots. Look up here, pre-round, jump, and place your camera at the apex of your jump. Move your camera to the left, and at the beginning of the round, you'll be able to see if a defender is peeking aggressively A main. Alternatively, you can place a camera right here as soon as the barriers drop. This camera will allow you to see if anybody is peeking aggressively on ramps, peeking A main, or peeking heaven as well. So you can see actually the head and the body of people who are rafters. For your cages on A, you should do these cages basically very often on attack, and they add a lot of pressure for the defenders. The first cage is right here, throw, and the second cage is the second floor of this balcony in the middle of this blue line. Throw that cage. And in fact, this cage cuts out line of sight in A main, so it allows your team to actually push up into heaven. Alternatively, you can activate this cage and allow your team to then push onto site. Mid is probably one of the most important areas to take as an attacker on Split. And there's a great camera to put down right here on this tree. This will allow you to see into vents as well as for any early peaks for male. Please look at this camera very quickly because it gets shot out very fast. Okay, it gives you very good information, but anybody who's peeking vents or peeking male will instantly shoot this out. So be quick when you're looking through this camera. If you're attacking mid or B, it's commonly a good idea as a Cypher to come onto A before the start of the round and place this default tripwire. This will allow you to detect if anybody is flanking you from A.
Here.
If you're attacking A or attacking mid, then again, as a Cypher, it is a good idea to come to B site and place a default tripwire here. This will allow you to detect if anybody's flanking you from B. And that concludes the best Cypher setups on Split. Hope you guys enjoyed, and hope you guys learned something from this video.